Today I'm doing something a little bit different, and honestly I've already started on this project and I got like not quite halfway through, but I decided this might be something that some of you guys are interested in doing. And this kind of even applies to people that have other classic cars because they use a very similar piece on their dashboard. But I'm gonna show you that and kind of explain what I'm doing here before we get into too much detail. So I'm just gonna show you really quick here. As you can tell, I have a lot of my dashboard taken out, and what I'm trying to do is I basically have this so I can pull this back just enough that I can sort of see what's going on back here. Don't know if you can see anything here, but there's a little piece that goes on the back of the dash, and I'll show you that in just a second. But essentially you get 12 volts to the back of your dash here, and you have to use a regulator to drop that voltage down to 5 volts. It's specifically for the gas gauge and the temp gauge over here. And I'm not using the oil or temp or pretty much anything at this point. I really just want to have the gas gauge. That's what I've been trying to do here. And it's proven to be difficult. But anyways, the temperature and fuel gauge had to be 5 volts or less. It has to be, I'm hearing like 3.5 at the very least in order to get them to function. I'll try to kind of like walk you through some of the stuff that I did to get to this point. It's kind of hard to show you because I don't really have it all set up right now, but up here, I'm not sure if you can see up in there, but there's like where the fuel comes from the tank, and then there's like a ground, and there's also a wire that goes to the actual gauge, and it's supposed to get a reading from the tank. So what you can do is you can get a multimeter, and you can kind of check the ohm reading that you get from the sending unit in the tank. Where the frick is my multimeter? Oh, it's probably over here. So this is just like a cheap multimeter from Harbor Freight or whatever. Let me see, I'm trying to remember. I believe I put it on ohms. You put on the 200 setting there at the bottom, and you put your ground on a known good ground, and then you put your other lead on the actual prong that your connector, the prong like on the actual sending unit, and you just put it on that and you'll get your reading. The reading that I got on mine was 26 ohms, and it's gonna depend on what the threshold is supposed to be for your tank, but 59 ohms should be empty for my tank, and then according to the service manual it should be 12 for full. So I should be somewhere pretty close to the middle, I'm believing. Regardless, it should be sending a signal. Since I can get it with the multimeter, I know that it's grounded and all that stuff, so I'm getting the signal from the sending unit. I should be showing half a tank or whatever that works out to be on the actual gauge. But I've tried grounding the sending unit, I've tried grounding the wire going to the gauge, I've done all this stuff, and it doesn't do anything. My gauge is just stuck on empty. If it's stuck on full, I've heard a lot that that's basically just a bad ground on your sending unit, and you may be able to fix that, or your sending unit itself is just bad. There's a few different things that it could be an instance like that, but since I got that good ohm reading, I'm gonna go with the sending unit is good. It's brand new. It's a brand new sending unit, brand new gas tank, all that stuff. So I started chasing a lot of issues. I put a power probe from like into that wire that's basically connecting to the sending unit. I unplugged that, put power through that, and then put like a multimeter or a test light somewhere else, like down the line, to see if I have like continuity, like there's no bad wiring or anything. So I checked that all the way up to a connector that's underneath the dash, and that was good. So pretty much from that point I had to take apart a lot of the dash to further troubleshoot this problem. So started taking apart the dash. I tried to check for power at the fuel gauge, and there's no power. For some reason, I think this might have to do with like a slightly different model or dash, but I was told to put a nylon washer underneath the input stud on the fuel gauge, which is where you get power. So how are you supposed to get power if the nylon is keeping it from getting conductivity? So that doesn't really make any sense. But I tried taking that off too, just to check, and then check for power again, and there was still nothing, from what I remember at least. I've done so much troubleshooting on this, I can't even remember what I have and haven't done. But I'm pretty sure I checked and there's no power. So that brought me to seeing if the dash was getting power at all in the first place. And my lights, the green lights that are on the dash, those were lighting up. So I figured I was getting power, but something else was going on. And really, at that point, I took a harness. It has a bunch of pins in it, or female pins. I took that off and I checked the specific prong that's supposed to get power from ignition, and I have voltage there. Plugged it back on, and then there's a spot. It's really hard to show you. I'm probably gonna have to put up a picture or something, but there's a contact where it gets power to the voltage regulator from the ignition, and it basically goes through it. I can show that with my connector here. So on the back of this, when it's plugged in, you get power into this connector here. And I actually took this off and I checked the voltage where it connects to the actual printed circuit right here, and it's 11.3 volts. So by the time it gets through everything else, has load on other stuff, resistance, whatever, I'm getting 11.3 volts here. And then it's supposed to go through like a mechanism inside of this. It's pretty archaic, but it goes through that, and then it drops the voltage down to, it's supposed to be between 3.5 and 5 volts, so I'm told. And I think nominal is like 4.5 or 5, but I bench tested this. So I basically took this, put it in my bench vise here, so that's grounding this actual piece here, and then I got my power probe and I put power to the ignition side like I was talking about right here, and then I used my meter. I had to like figure out a good way to hold all this stuff all at the same time, so I like put this somewhere and grounded it, and then I checked the other side that should be getting that like 4.5 or 5 volts, and the maximum I could get through this was 2.6 volts, and that's with 12 volts directly from the battery on the car. So I'm likely getting even less than that, probably like 2 volts maximum when it's actually plugged in and everything. So I checked the voltage on that, and that pretty much tells me this is it's not entirely bad because it's still dropping the voltage like it's supposed to, but it's dropping it too much, which tells me it's probably dirty inside or something else is going on. Maybe these clips are not pushing down hard enough because they have like this really weird design that basically is supposed to like push against the surface on the printed circuit back there. But I took off my old one, and this is just the housing right now. It was super crusty. I can show you a picture of that too. But I started on this one. This is gonna be my guinea pig, and this is where the actual modification comes into play. So there is a resistor that you can buy. It's called a 7805 resistor, and the one that I got is a 2 amp model, and has a really high temperature resistance of like 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has like a built-in safety, like a fail-safe, so if it gets to a certain temperature it'll just shut off. It's still going to be protected by your gauge fuse also, which is only 4 amp fuse, I believe. So there is some good protection there, and it doesn't require a heat sink or anything, so you can basically just put it back into this. And this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my guinea pig. This is my older, not as good condition regulator. But essentially what you do is I can show you pictures of this too, but before I took it all off, well, that'll be what the picture is. And so what you're left with here is 2 posts, and there's like a screw, like a really weird looking screw on there. The posts hold these clips on there, so you got to keep those. And so basically one is like your ignition coming in, the 12 volts, and then one's going to be the 5 volts out. But that resistor does exactly that. It drops that voltage down to a steady 5 volts. So you're turning it into like a solid state regulator rather than using that weird spring wire mechanism. I have limited knowledge of how that actually works. A lot of times I don't really know a lot of the inner workings of how this stuff works, how it functions, but I do know how to follow directions. And this has worked for other people. There's some people that say that there's other better ways to do it, and maybe they're right, but like I said, there's a couple fail-safes in this, and I don't think it's going to really pose any kind of risk. I've heard of people running their regulator like this for like 17 years, so I think that it's a pretty tested and safe way to do this, and other people with other makes have done similar stuff too, so this is not like unique to AMC's or anything. Getting back to this whole thing, you take that little screw out. Oops, hopefully I don't want to break this. That little screw right there comes out, and on this side you're going to be putting the resistor right there, and it fits in this kind of blank space in here, and you wire it a certain way to these posts, and that's pretty much it. So like you're using this existing hole to fasten down the resistor itself, and then wiring to the posts for power, and that's pretty much it. So you can only really order these resistors in like quantities of 10 or more at a time, so I have 10 of these on the way. And yeah, I'm gonna try to get it right on this one, and if I mess it up then that's okay, because this is the one that's slightly less good condition. So I'm gonna test it out on that one, then I'm gonna do it on this one, hopefully have as good or better results. And I think if I can get all this working right, I'm gonna give this one away to somebody that needs it. So I'll figure that out by the end of the movie or video, whatever you want to call it. I'm waiting on the resistors. I'll get that tomorrow, and then we're gonna get started on this. I'm not really an expert soldering person or anything, but I'm gonna give it a good shot here, and we'll just see how it works out. I guess this is kind of the moment of truth here. I have everything finished up. I got it up here in the vise. I got my ground on my meter clamped onto something. Basically what I need to do here is, this is the ignition side. I'm just gonna double check that, make sure I got that right. Yep. So I'm gonna be putting 12 volts with my power probe here. This is connected to the battery. It's kind of just the best setup that I have. I'm gonna put 12 volts to that, and I'm gonna check it on the other side, and hopefully I'll have 5 volts going through. If not, I may have a couple ideas. The ground that I have on this is not really like the best setup. There is like a tab that comes on here that I'm missing when I was messing around with stuff. Oh, you know what? I literally just saw it as soon as I said something. So you can kind of like use this tab that goes on the side of it. You can see it on the other one here. There's a little tab, and it's basically just a ground that helps ground to the case. But anyways, I kind of had to do my own thing, as you saw. I'm gonna see if this works. Oops. Bad grip. Try something else here. I'm not sure if it's working. It's only giving me 0.20 volts. Uh-oh. Learning a few things on that first try. I kind of went through the second one a little bit better. Kind of had a better idea on how to do pretty much everything, including soldering. I have everything wired up now finally with good grounds and all that, so I can show you the voltage. But this is basically how I'm bench testing it. I have the probe from the battery on my car. You ground it to what's supposed to be ground on your component, and I have 2 leads giving me additional ground because I don't have it in the bench vise anymore. I have the ground lead in the bench vise. I got this new tester because I didn't know if that was what was going on, but I got this for $6 at Harbor Freight. I forgot to say, one other thing is I kept the tab on this one also, but for this one I wired my ground wire directly to this, and then it just wedges in there pretty much how it does from the factory. It's kind of impossible to get these crimped back down in a super fancy way. This gets the job done though, and once it's on there you're not really going to be able to tell the difference anyway, so in the end it doesn't really matter. So I'll turn this on really quick. I'm going to put power, you can't see it but I've already shown you a little bit. Put power to the power side on the ignition, and that's the other side that's going to the gauges. I'm getting almost exactly 5 volts. And if you do look at the manual, it tells you 5 volts is optimal, and it can go a little over and it can go a little under, but whether it's under or over will inversely affect or conversely affect your gauge reading. So if you have like 4.5 volts, you're going to be showing just a little bit low. 5.5 volts, you're going to be showing just a little bit high. So 5 volts constant is perfect. That should give me a very accurate reading, or at least accurate based on whatever the sending unit is telling the gauge. I guess now really it's just getting it back onto the gauge and bolted on, which might be difficult because I have messed with like the mounting tabs a little bit, so they might not line up perfectly with the holes in the printed circuit and stuff anymore. So it might be a little bit of a challenge. I don't know. I'm gonna try to get back on there and at least get it tested before I decide to put everything back together. Oh, it's pretty late and everybody's sleeping, so I need to be quiet here. But I finally got everything working the way that it should. I put in the, oh, there goes whatever little light I did have. I did use my better regulator, the better housing at least. I tested everything and it's good. And right now I have the power on. Everything seems to be good, and it's right at half a tank like I thought it would be. So I think that this sending unit will be accurate also, which is another major plus. But let me show you here. There we go. It's halfway full, just like I thought it would be. That's awesome. I have it charging right now because I'm kind of just draining my battery sitting here, but I just wanted to make sure everything is good before I start buttoning this dash back together. So there seems to be some people on the internet that are concerned that this is going to burn the car down, like it's going to get too hot and somehow it's going to melt the dash slash burn the entire car down. So what I've decided to do is a real-world test where I plugged a battery charger up to the front of the car. You can see my cable over here running to the car, and I just turned the key to the on position. I've had it on for about half an hour so far, and so far everything is still good. It's still reading where it should be. My intent with this is to let it stay on for 2 hours to replicate a really long drive, or basically just like the maximum distance you can go before you need to go get gas. So I'm gonna try this out, and hopefully this will get rid of any fears of it burning down, or maybe it'll teach me a lesson and my car will burn down and I can tell you not to do this. Okay, we're about 65 minutes now into the test, and gauge is still reading steady, not bouncing, not doing anything. All the other lights are on. Battery's still actually charging with the charger, so I got a good charger at least. But yeah, so far so good. Check back here in about an hour. Alright, it's been 2 hours officially right now. And the gauge is still reading accurately. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. Yeah, gauge is still reading, everything's still on. As far as I can tell, the car's not burnt down. Oops. Try to get you in there to look at the regulator to show you that the regulator has not melted anything, doesn't look different at all. The one thing I could say though is if you look really close right here, the regulator is pretty close to that duct right there for the vent coming over here, and it's even further back when you get everything pushed in there. So I will say, if you are concerned or you just want to be precautious like I'm probably going to be, you can actually put like that heat barrier stuff. It's like the sound deadening / heat barrier film right there. So I'm probably going to do that, and then even like on the bottom part of the dash in this area, you can put some of that stuff on the bottom if you don't want to worry about your plastic getting really hot. So I'm probably going to do those two things, and after that I think it'll be totally fine and there will be nothing to worry about. And I think just for, you know, the sake of it, I'm going to let this go a little bit longer just to kind of prove a point with this, I guess. So that's it, guys. I finally got the gas gauge working. It only took me like 6 hours. Ridiculous. But I finally got it working, so I'm happy about that. For the other housing that I have though, that regulator, if there's somebody that needs it, I think the best way to do this is just first come, first serve. If you need this regulator for your car, just send me an email at danstallings@fasterandlouder.com and just put in the subject like regulator or something, and I'll just send it out to you. Just you pay shipping or something and I'll just send it out. Hopefully you can use it. If anybody is interested in having me rebuild their regulator too, then you know I'm up for that also. Send me in your old regulator and I'll get your stuff all updated. Only a few more weeks until duct tape drags, so I'm getting closer and closer. Having the ability to see how much gas I actually have in my tank is a huge plus. I am so stupidly happy about this. But I'm sure there'll be some more videos. If not, I guess I'll see you guys at duct tape drags. Later.